I'm going to talk about it in layperson language as much as I can. The second one is, what does a resilient person look like? Because we call people resilient, but we don't really know what that means. And the third one is resilience exercises. These are take-home exercises that you can focus on your free time. I'm going to give examples to make it easier for you. So if you'd like to take notes, that would be very helpful. And I wanted to start off with a very relatable example, rafting. Yes, not a lot of us are engaging in activities like rafting, but when we imagine it, we can totally relate to it. So I want you to think about a scenario. Imagine you're taking a difficult raft trip down a river, and the map that you use shows unavoidable rapids and turns. How would you make sure you handle the unexpected problems? Similar things would come to mind. And here are some ideas that I personally wrote down. So technically, it would be super helpful for me to get a guide with me to engage in the journey. I could take the support of more experienced rafters. I could have the companionship of trusted people. And I would definitely use an extra life jacket and a stronger raft. So this would mean, with the right tools and support, I would not only make it through the challenges of the journey, the rapid turns and the lumps and the rocks, but I would also most likely emerge a more confident and courageous rafter. It goes on with the example of playing the guitar. Imagine you are a person who's just taking their first guitar playing lessons. The strings have a high tension, so for a beginner, it's quite difficult to start playing the guitar and the chords continuously and pressing on the chords back to back, because the strings will potentially make your fingertips sore. Some people may quit after the second or third lesson, just like in therapy. We have a lot of dropouts. But the important question is, why would you push past the initial discomfort? Like, what keeps you going despite the super intolerable discomfort? Most likely, you know that you'll get greater joy and satisfaction ahead, because playing the guitar will make you feel super happy if you're a beginner. And the more you practice, the tougher and stronger your fingers get. And pretty soon, playing the guitar is effortless and even enjoyable. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is, the strings and the string tension don't change at all, but your fingers are now resilient. So, oops, sorry, I'm really bad with this. Oh, no. Okay, so if we want to define resilience in the most basic way possible, we would say resilience is the ability to recover, rebound, bounce back, adjust, and thrive after misfortune, change, or adversity. Joyce Marder, a social psychologist that I really like, said, resilience is the strength to continue on the path that you know to be true, despite challenges and obstacles. With the rafting and the guitar examples, you might think, okay, Dilara, what the hell does that tell me? Let me tell you. These experiences are very simple and they belong to daily life mostly, but even they are certainly painful and difficult. But just like these examples, another example doesn't have to determine the outcome of your life. And many aspects of your life can be controlled by you, it can be modified and improved with, because that's the actual role of resilience when you use it well. It is comprised of, resilience as a concept is comprised of behaviors, thoughts, and actions anyone can learn and develop. So I totally and utterly believe in the fact that we all have a potential, we just sometimes don't remember it. Before going on to what resilience is in a lot more detail, I want to talk about what resilience isn't, because as a clinical psychologist, I personally believe that when we are to believe in something and defend it and integrate it into our lives, we first need to know what the uh, anti-concept is, what the anti-concept looks like. If we know what it isn't, then it becomes a lot easier for us to define and defend stuff. So the first point is being resilient doesn't mean that you won't experience difficulty and distress. As human beings, we're all going to experience these feelings and situations, and there's no way out. Every single person on this planet Earth will go through difficulty and distress for the rest of their lives. So we're not trying to change the fact that we will potentially go through some difficulty or distress. We're just trying to change how we respond to it. And in fact, the road to resilience involves considerable psychological distress because, like it or not, that's what makes you a lot more stronger in the end. Contrary to the popular belief, resilience is not a personality trait that only some people possess. There are no selected people on earth who have this gift, and the rest of us aren't lonely and we're just going through things on our own. We're all experiencing the same stuff. And most importantly, resilience is not extraordinary. When we call something extraordinary in science and in research, it means that correlation wise or causation wise, we don't really see that phenomenon in a lot of places on a lot of platforms. But a lot of research shows that the ability to learn and practice resilience is very doable and regular and normal. So this just makes resilience ordinary science-wise. American Psychiatric Association wrote this down in one of their research papers, which I really liked. Like building a muscle, increasing your resilience takes time and intentionality. So, and right below that is my thought, which is resilience requires a level of mastery, and mastery takes practice. Just like playing the guitar and becoming a good rafter who goes through rocks and turns a lot more confidently. So Jeannie Joseph, great person in the field of resilience, talked about types of resilience and determined that there are three main types that I want to talk about today. So the first one, I'm going to go with an example so that it is more relatable and understandable for everyone. Same example will go for 3 stages in life. So natural resilience. Think of natural resilience as the resilience that you're born with. It's human nature. It is your life force. And every single one of us has natural resilience on the inside. The best example to natural resilience can be seen in young children. So imagine a young child going to the park to play, and then he's engaging in different games, and suddenly, during one game, he fell and almost broke his knee. It's bleeding, it's terrifying. What does the young child do? Up to 45 years of age, the young child won't even think about the pain after you show the young child a toy car that he can play with. He will completely forget about what went on. He won't dwell on it. He will get back up and he will keep playing different games or even the same game. So naturally, we're programmed to feel this way about the challenges of life. Get back up, fight for it, persist till we get something that we want. So we all possess this. And then the life stage moves on to the adaptive resilience stage, which is what we call trial by fire. That young child who fell and had a super sore knee will now learn that one particular game will lead to a sore knee sometimes. So that's why he will know, all right, if I have to play games, I don't have to play that game. And if I play that game continuously, I have to be more careful from now on. because my knee is bleeding and it hurt. Adaptive resilience is the resilience type when circumstances force you to learn, change, and adapt. It's sort of like, in my words, rolling with life's punches. Then finally, the life stage moves to restored resilience, which is the learned resilience that we're all working on as adults. You can learn techniques that help build resilience to restore your natural resilience. Going back to the young child example. A, with the natural resilience, he got back up and kept playing the games. B, he got weary of one type of particular game, or maybe running too fast, or maybe jumping all around because he knows that his knee can bleed sometimes and he doesn't want to do that. C, when we move on to the restored resilience, the adult now knows in his strategy toolbox, now knows that, okay, playing this type of game can get me hurt, but it doesn't mean that I have to stop playing games altogether. I don't have to give up on playing games. I don't have to sit in the corner. It's not goodbye fun for the rest of my life. I just need to know what strategy worked, what strategy didn't work, and I could go back to my natural resilience level as a kid, which is the given in all of us. And I can say, all right, something might have not worked, but it doesn't mean that everything won't work out ever. I may have run a great piece of news with my editor, and he may have said, this is rubbish. It doesn't mean that I have to give up working at the newsroom. I just have to know what strategies to use so that I can get back up more strongly according to the circumstances. You might ask me, Dilara, is it necessary to have all three types of these resilience levels? No. Although it would be amazing, I personally don't have all three, and I may even be low at natural resilience, but I can confidently say that I worked on my restored resilience and I'm doing pretty well. And another interesting factor here is greater amounts of resilience in one type can compensate for lower amounts in other types. Say you're an incredibly naturally resilient person, and your restored resilience level, according to your perspective, is a little low. It doesn't mean that you will not be resilient again. It just means that, okay, you're strong naturally in that level. You can work on your restored resilience and learn from your experiences, and it could go vice versa as well. So I get this question really often. What does a resilient person look like? Because in daily life, we technically say someone's resilient if we see this person as a really rigid, quote unquote, strong, and determinate person. But Connor and Davidson, who are the most famous researchers in the resilience field, made a checklist in 2003, and they talked about the common characteristics of resilient people, of psychologically resilient people. These are not rules. They are not the given. They are just statistically common facts that I wanted to share with you. So don't feel like, oh my God, this is a resilient person and I'm not resilient at all because I don't match with these qualities. It doesn't work that way. This is just the scientifically proven part that I wanted to present, but we can talk about the details later on. So a resilient person views change as a challenge or opportunity. Most resilient people show commitment and recognize their own limits. They engage, but don't rely on the support of others. Not relying on the support of others is the important fact here that I would totally underline. They have solid personal and or collective goals. So what does a collective goal mean here? It could be as simple as working as a team at the newsroom. Say your division is comprised of 8 people and you have a common goal all together that you want to work for. So a collective goal can even be that, and your personal goals are your personal goals. They're quite self-efficient and handle things without feeling like they are the victim of a situation. Because if you're solution focused and if you are more realistic than the majority of the people, then you automatically become self-efficient anyway. They derive knowledge and motivation from past experiences and achievements, which is very important, and I'm going to talk about that later on. They have a realistic sense of control and having choices, and they know that they're not bound to some options. They know that there are tons of alternatives in life, and that touches upon the characteristic of flexibility that I will also talk about later on. A resilient person is willing to adapt to new novel circumstances and tolerant of negative affect. So affect here is emotion, used in science. And finally, they're consistent, patient, and action-oriented. A great example that I use while talking about this is the example of a salesperson. If we say, I'm a salesperson working at a luxury department store, and a client walked in immediately, I haven't been able to do sales up until that point that day, and I'm working off of commission. So a client, a wealthy client, walks in and says, I'm gonna buy this bottle of perfume for $1,000, but he makes you work for it. You talk to him for an hour and a half. You're trying to use every strategy in your toolbox. You're making faces. You're complimenting him. Everything's going great. It's past the point of maybe 2 hours now, and you just want the client to buy the perfume and leave. Suddenly, the client gets a phone call, and after the phone call, he says, sorry, gotta go, emergency, goodbye, and then leaves. Maybe a major part of your income depended on the sales, this piece of sales, but you lost a client. What do you do? Most of us would probably say, okay, I would move on, because that's a natural resilience within us that is speaking. Just because they lost a client who was going to buy an incredible amount of stuff from them, a salesperson doesn't give up on sales completely. Just because they put in 2 hours of work and worked really hard to sell that bottle of perfume doesn't mean that the setback of losing the client is impermanent. I don't think any of us would say the salesperson should give up sales for good, because that's not what's going on in real life. Um, would no one else in the world shop again? Would the salesperson not have a client ever again? No. Would the salesperson have to work really hard for another bottle of perfume in the future? Most likely, because you have to put in the work in order for the outcome to come running to your arms. And here's when our dismay of certain things come into play, like, oh my God, I worked so hard for this, and I did this for a couple of days, and I presented this to my editor, and suddenly my editor says, no, this is a piece of garbage, move on. It doesn't mean that you're invaluable. It doesn't mean that you're incapacitated. It doesn't mean that you should get demoralized, because you put in every single bit of work up until now in your life to get where you are. And that's resilience in and of itself. So all of us are resilient to a certain extent. I know when I talk about things like these, some people that I come into close contact with uh, tell me that these symptoms are quite common regarding how they feel when they think about resilience. So, yes, of course, we can't change the fact that some people have high resilience levels and some people have low resilience levels. But before getting into more detail, I want you to think about these symptoms to recognize if you would like to work on your resilience levels or not. You could feel depressed sometimes, you could feel demoralized, victimized, especially when you don't get recognition, because it's incredibly annoying not to get recognized uh, by people that we work really hard for. You could feel hopeless. You could feel disconnected, tired, and fatigued, like, oh my God, I don't want to get out of bed. I have to do this shift again. You could feel stressed out. Um, you could even like not be able to engage in activities that you normally would engage in very comfortably because of your level of stress. Even minor tasks and minuscule things can be setbacks, which brings us to the last point. You could feel like it's difficult to continue with whatever you're doing. Um, Before moving on to more detail and practical knowledge, I want to touch upon two things. So the first one is emotions are not permanent. We have to internalize this fact. We have to write it down and put it up somewhere. Whatever we do, we have to know, regardless of how good or bad an emotion might be, it's not and cannot last forever. So when I was studying psychology as an undergrad, um, my professor at USC taught me this view of seeing emotions as waves, just like the waves in mathematics and physics. So infinity is infinite, but emotions are not. Just like waves have a beginning and then a peak point, and then they can't stay at the peak point forever, and they go down, and sometimes they disappear, sometimes they go below zero, and then they keep going back up. Emotions are like that. Just like they have a beginning, they also have an ending. And no matter how much we might want to hold on to them, like, yes, I'm feeling depressed and I want to keep feeling depressed because depression makes me feel comfortable right now, which is a very normal and regular scenario. But as much as you want to hold on to it, you just can't forever because it has an ending for sure. And taking this piece of knowledge in our pockets as a fact will help us through distress considerably. Because if you have this reminder constantly in your daily life, then you totally know that whatever you're going through, this is not wishful thinking, this is not optimism, this is not Pollyanna, it's science. So do know that emotions have an ending. And just like uh, feeling depressed or anything of that sort, feeling like you're not resilient and feeling the symptoms of low resilience is also not permanent. And my second point, which is pretty much the most important thing in this presentation, probably, flexibility is our friend. You have to remember that what bends relatively easily cannot be broken. I put in the example of a spring coil toy here that I used to play with as a child. And coils are usually made out of metal or hard plastic. And when you look at them integrated in an integrated way, they stand like this, like round shaped, like they cannot be broken. But on the inside, the coil is flexible, so you can bend it anywhere you want and it still doesn't get broken. Contrary to the popular belief, the people who are most resilient aren't the people who are the most rigid. we see a very tough looking person, and they're working really hard towards their goals. They're ticking off of everything on their lists. They're achieving things. They get constantly promoted. They are doing well with their family. They're doing well with blah, blah, blah. But we'll never know, because science says the most resilient people are the ones who find it easiest to adapt. And just like the spring coil, I think one take-home practice here should be thinking about how flexible we are and how well adaptive we are to novel situations, because that's what determines survival, essentially, from an evolutionary perspective. So, what now, you may ask me? Unfortunately, guys, there is no single prescription. If I had one, I would totally give you the prescription, but I devised a set of exercises, and there are simple yet effective methods we can integrate into our daily lives in order to start working on our resilience levels. Here, I must say, the things that I will be talking about will be take-home exercises for you that you can apply anytime you would like. But if you would like to work on something on a personal level, please contact me. Please come see me. I'm here always. That's not the scope of this seminar. I'm just giving you a nice introduction and things to think about. But if you have more detailed personal questions, please contact me personally, and I will be more than happy to help. All right, so before suggestions, we need to understand what's important to turn things around. I determined 4 main points that is very important for working for our resilience levels, and I will be talking about those in detail now. So we kind of have to have our confidence in our personal ability to get through distress, and that runs through having a clear understanding of your strengths and the strategies that worked before, what I like to call the strategy toolbox. The second one is, since resilience requires mastery and mastery requires practice, as I talked about before, having a set of goals that are on paper, completely concrete, to strive for, that are A, renewable, B, attainable, C, realistic, D, grounded, is a great way to start. If you're writing things down, don't worry about this slide. There are more detailed ones that are coming up, and you can take notes there. So you can constantly tick things off of your list and update it any way you like. And believe it or not, it looks very simple. It looks very layperson, but science has proven, because I did like pre-med and psychiatry and blah, 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 I'm very science oriented. So I'd like to support what I say with research as much as possible. And research has proven that these types of goals have helped people to strive for things in a more resilient way a lot more than you would think. 3, change the narrative. Sometimes in life, we feel like we're not the author whatsoever. It feels like other people and many other circumstances are writing the story of our lives, but it doesn't have to be that way. Yes, they are writing parts of our story for us to take in and integrate into our own story, but the author is you, and that never changes, even if someone intervenes very considerably. Doesn't matter. 4, based on this understanding, the understanding that you are the author, you can then practice letting yourself off the hook, something that we don't usually do. But my personal opinion is we have to start practicing this as soon as possible, because honestly, no one else will and no one else can. Even if it looks like someone let you off the hook from time to time, it is you who got out of that situation and got yourself off the hook. And yes, it's a cliche. It has to be in every single psychology seminar, but self-compassion is very crucial as well. And don't worry, I'm gonna make it more tangible, like something that you can look at in a more concrete way, and it will lose its vague meaning, like self-compassion. So we're moving on to exercises. The first category that I talked about, strategy toolbox. So this is a 5-step exercise that I would like you guys to make notes of. I can give you 10 minutes to do this, and then you can keep it to yourselves. I just want, I don't want the answers personally. It's totally your call. It's up to you. If you have a question, you can let me know. But writing it down will help you a lot. So it's gonna look something like this, okay? We're gonna have a little cross here. And here you'll have supports that kept you upright. I'm gonna explain the exercise in a minute. So if you can write this down, I will be really happy. Supports that kept you upright, strategies that kept you moving, sagacity, which is the wisdom that we learned from someone or a book or a song. It doesn't matter. I'll explain it in a minute, like I said. And solution-seeking behaviors that you showed. This is a list that you keep to yourself. You don't have to share it with anyone. And I'm going to tell you about what the point is in a minute. So if someone can write to me when they're done copying this sheet down, I can continue. So I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes. Are we done? Close to being done? All right. If everyone's done, I'm moving on. Perfect. So the first step here, in order to fill this out, will be recalling a recent example of resilience. I can give you examples. It's relatively easy. It's very simple. It doesn't have to be the experience of your life. It just needs to be one experience that you think you showed resilience. Say you broke your knee, you injured your knee, you walked with crutches, and you made it. Say you got some negative feedback at work, which is the most common thing that we don't want to deal with, but we're dealing with. And you just made it. You came out strong. Or maybe you had an argument with a friend or a family member, but you felt like you were pretty resilient and you had a solid position. So write that down. Nobody needs to know. Just an example. Okay. The second step will be identifying the supportive people. So let's say I had a super big fight at work with my boss. Whose support did I pull in? Who did I turn to? And who supported me successfully? Like, what taught me this following sentence? In a situation like this, I know that George will be by my side. George can be anyone. It doesn't have to be one person. It could be multiple people. It doesn't matter. We just need one person at least. And the third step is to identify strategies, which is the most important part in this exercise. So, despite the fact that you might think that you didn't use strategies or solution seeking behavior, you did. Because as humans, we can't survive without the use of strategies. It's impossible. Sometimes we do it unconsciously, sometimes we use planned out and conscious strategies, but in the end, there's always a strategy. What did I say here? What strategies did you use to help yourself cope with any negative thoughts and feelings that showed up in response to the difficulty? Yes, these are super American. Don't worry about those. Did you meditate, write in a gratitude journal? Yeah, right. Like nobody writes in a gratitude journal anymore. That's for new age Americans, but that's how I was trained. So that's why here's what it is. Maybe, okay, all right, I'm gonna give you more realistic examples. You went for a walk, and I'm talking about healthy coping things. Like, it's not like I drank myself to death and I passed out, and then the next week everything was great. Like, no, healthy coping behaviors, healthy strategies. Like, I, I'm engaged in a talk. I sat this person down, and I engaged in a talk. I did this, I did that. Maybe like I read a book and I binge watched Netflix. I cooked, anything. Because later on, you will know that this strategy works for you. That's my entire game here. I'm going to have you do this step by step, and you're going to have a strategy toolbox in front of you. And then you can apply it to a future or current example to see like, oh, this and that worked. This person helped me. These strategies I can use because they relieve me. That's why I can use these in the future as well. So that's what we're trying to do here. 4, sagacity. Sagacity is a fancy word, and it is basically what we call wisdom. I can gain wisdom from reading Dostoevsky's book. I can gain wisdom from listening to an amazing song. I can gain wisdom from spiritual readings. Like I can even read the Bible or the Quran or the Torah and I can gain wisdom. I can gain wisdom from anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a scientific piece of wisdom. It just matters in your own experience, what gave you wisdom, what gave you motivation in this case. So write that down as well. By the way, just to remind you, we're not talking in general. We're talking about that specific example of resilience that you guys thought of in the beginning. All right, 10 more seconds because I'm an impatient person. Okay, final step, the fourth category. So because for the table, the cross, we're gonna have 4 categories. The first one wasn't a category, it's just a situation, and steps 2, 3, 4, 5 will go on the chart. So 5, the thing that I have the most difficulty with my clients, my friends, my family, every single person that I know. Dilara, they tell me, I don't have solution seeking behaviors. I never respond to stress well. I could have done this and that, but I couldn't. I didn't. I'm a weak person. I'm this, I'm that. It's super easy to bring ourselves down, but we're not programmed for it. We just learn it. So, anything, you guys, that got you through this situation is a solution seeking behavior. Say you had a super bad fight with your significant other and you yelled and you talked about your feelings and you cried. That's a solution seeking behavior as well because you let it out and you're looking for a solution. At the back of your mind, you're thinking, I want this to get solved. And that qualifies it for a solution seeking behavior. I'm not condoning this. Do not yell at people, but just a very regular example to give because sometimes it's hard for people to think like, oh my God, did I negotiate? Did I plan it out? What did I do? You don't have to do those things. Even if you Googled something, oh my God, he's so cute. Even even if you Googled something, okay, even if you like wanted to solve a problem and you're like, okay, what the hell do I know about this? I know nothing. And you Google it, that's a solution seeking behavior because you are seeking out new information and that's what matters. So write those down as well. Okay, I kind of feel like I can move on. Please, if I'm okay, so one thing about me, I'm very hyper and I move fast. And please tell me, like, write it down from the chat box or whatever. Tell me to stop or say, like, I'm still working on it, and I will because I don't want to move too fast. I just want this to, like, get across as much as possible because when it's online, it's a little okay, so it should look like this, and those things that you wrote down for each category should go right here.
Dilara, Regan's got a question.
I can't see it.
It's on the chat.
I'm trying to. Let me
Okay,
see.
so if you want, I'll just read it out to you. It says,
Okay.
he says that I've listed 3 points under strategies that keep you
Uh-huh.
moving. Those 3 points are the same answers I'd write under the other categories. Am I incorrectly defining the categories, or is it normal that my answers are the same for
Okay,
them all?
great question. Great question. Thank you so much. I will talk about it. I should have warned you from the beginning. So basically, we mix. I believe you're saying the answers for your strategies are the answers for your solution-seeking behaviors also, because they can be mixed and matched. Um, it is not weird that the answers are the same, not at all. Maybe your strategies are the same as your solution-seeking behaviors, which is fine. But strategies are more like something we use to relieve the stress, something we did to get ourselves a little distant from the level of the stress. But solution-seeking behaviors are the actions that we engage in order to solve that problem so that we can be resilient. Was that clear? I don't know. I can give you an example too. Oh, okay. I have the chat now. Did anyone else have the same issue? Like something that you guys want to make a point of or ask me? Anything? Okay. So again, just to wrap this up, I'm having you do this so that you know, A, you are not alone. You had support before. You will have support again. B, you have your own strategies. You have used them before. You can use them again in a similar. Oh, Reagan, I'm sorry. Maybe how do I explain this? Okay, imagine, Reagan, this is going to be more clear. I had a very bad fight. So my strategy is to go smoke a cigarette and have a cup of coffee, okay? Because I wanted to relieve the distress. Having a cigarette and smoking, smoking a cigarette and having a cup of coffee, does this work towards solving the problem? Like I had a fight with my spouse. Does this solve the problem? No, it doesn't. So it's a strategy. I relieve the distress. I feel a lot less stressful at the moment. That's my strategy. But my solution seeking behavior now is going to talk to my spouse after an hour when I'm done with my cigarette and my coffee. Maybe this is a lot more clear. Yes, solution seeking is more long term. Think of it that way. Things that you can generalize to many different situations. Okay, you're welcome. Moving forward then, we have this chart. We know we had support. We can have it again. Strategies, we can use them again. Sagacity, say, oh, this writer's books impress me so much and I get such wisdom from them. I can keep reading that author's books again if it's going to help me in my resilience integrity, if it's going to help me stay more durable. And solution seeking behaviors I showed, maybe I sat someone down and talked after I calmed down for an hour. Maybe that works best for me because I realized that when I talk immediately and start screaming, it's not going to solve anything. But once I did this, I sat someone down after an hour of me time, and then suddenly the things just worked out. So that's a proven solution-seeking behavior on my part that I can use later on. So this was the first exercise. This is one thing. Set of goals. If you guys write these down, they will be very helpful for you, I think. It's just 4 criteria. It's nothing. I can just write down the 4 words that come after A, B, C, and D, so that you can have this to yourself when you're reconsidering your goals again. This is what I do in my daily life as a clinical psychologist, and it works wonders for me. It keeps me more grounded. So I wanted to give you these suggestions so that they could work towards bettering your resilience level. So I usually ask myself, are my list of goals renewable or flexible? Renewable, what do I mean by that? Is it super rigid, like I have to do this and like I have to be the editor, I have to jump onto that, I have to do this, I have to do that? When we work towards goals like that, when we frame goals like that, it becomes impossible to strive for them because there's a lot of distress that comes with it, lots of difficulty that comes with it. We don't want that. So that's why goals should be more flexible. Like, yes, I could be the editor, but I could also be / something else as well. Maybe I have a bunch of alternatives. Oh, maybe like being this would be good. I could strive for this, but I could also consider this. Always having a flexible option on the side, because what's able to bend cannot be broken, like the spring coil example. Are my list of goals attainable? So as journalists, most of you, I imagine, aiming for the Nobel Prize for mathematics is not going to be attainable because it's not objectively or relatively doable unless you're a math genius that no one knows about. If not, it's not attainable. Please do not put non-attainable goals for yourselves. It's unnecessary. What do I mean by objectively and relatively doable? Objectively coming from you, from your context. I'm a journalist. Here are my abilities. I'm a blah, blah, blah. Here are my abilities. I'm a clinical psychologist. Here are my abilities. And they should be relatively doable so that striving for them gets easier and your resilience level doesn't get hurt that well. C, realistic. If you accomplished similar things before, you will be a lot more confident and realistic in your abilities to accomplish a similar thing again. The opposite of this is just hurting your resilience level, because if it's unrealistic, then you keep beating yourself up and you don't let yourself off the hook, and suddenly you can't bend, but you're broken. These are very simple things, but very important. And finally, grounded. It should have a foundation. Like, it shouldn't be crazy irrational. I'm gonna have a cooking channel tomorrow. My lifelong dream was to cook. Yes, you can, but even in order to get to that, you have to leap through certain levels and then get to that level. Make it more grounded. Make it have a foundation. All right, so research that I will be talking about today will be the research that UC Berkeley conducted. A really good professor of mine from my university was also working with Berkeley, and I came across this research. Of course, it's more detailed and it makes a lot more sense when explained in detail, but we don't have that time. If you guys want, I can always send you vignettes. Before I jump into the research, I have to form this logical thought train in your minds. we all go through distress, okay? We have to. When we go through distress, we start ruminating. What does rumination mean? Rehashing events and negative feelings attached to those events over and over and over again. So in psychology, we call this, in a more relatable example, we call this a cognitive spinning of wheels. The wheels keep spinning, but the wheels don't move us forward at all. And when researchers at Berkeley thought about this, they came up with this exercise in conjunction with the, I think, journalism department, like professors from journalism department, I think. And they came up with expressive writing. What does expressive writing mean? It's continuous writing for 20 minutes and 20 minutes only. Not more than 20 minutes, not less than 20 minutes, 20 minutes freely. The goal is not to make sense. You're not making sense. Like, I'm feeling this because of this and because of this, like arguments attached to another argument. We don't want that. We want the mind to go crazy freely and get things concretely on paper. The goal is not to write a memoir. You don't sit down and say like, oh, this happened to me in my life and I feel just so miserable, such dismay. Like, you can, but you don't have to. It's not a memoir. It's not going to be published. It's just a piece of paper only in your possession. They said that this helps you find silver linings. I hate the phrase silver linings. It sounds very like positive psychology, like optimistic new age thing. But the question is more realistic, which is what I liked about this. Did things really happen the way you think they did? Or is commentary speaking louder than reality? Because a lot of us help the commentary to speak louder than reality from time to time. So they said, all right, we're going to gather a bunch of people to do this and see how the statistics are. And they gathered almost 116 people, I think. I can't remember it exactly at the moment, but if someone's interested, I can give you the numbers. Participants who did expressive writing for 4 days back to back in the span of a month, like 80 minutes of writing in total, 2020, back to back in a month. We're doing a lot better on distress scales 6 weeks later and happier up to 3 months later. You may say, what the hell is this? It looks very simple. I don't think it's going to solve my problems. But trust me, when you run your mind freely and get things concretely on paper, you see, oh my God, like without limits, without any rules, if I let the pen slide on the paper, this is what comes out. So this is where I'm at. It's quite interesting where I'm at because I never imagined myself to be at this place, if it makes sense. If you have questions, you can always ask. And participants apparently realized the crises aren't insurmountable problems. You can't change the fact that highly stressful events happen, but you can change how you interpret and respond to these events. And that's what expressive writing helps you to do. If you want to try it out for your resilience level, you're more than welcome to. This is my final slide. I know I tired you guys a lot. I talk. I'm a talker. And then we can talk together and I can get questions. So I combined letting yourself off the hook and self-compassion because they're really similar concepts. And a very famous psychologist, Deborah Serrani, came up with a 4-factor approach for people like me who want to see tangible things. Because when I say be compassionate towards yourself, I don't even know what that means. That could mean a lot of things because compassion can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But according to Sarani's 4-factor approach, there are 4 steps you can use in order to be a little bit easier on yourself. I'm not saying you're going to be Gandhi tomorrow. I'm just saying it will be helpful. Trust me, it's tested and it's learned. So 1, state the facts. I'm going to go with an example here, okay? Let's say breaking my knee. I fell off the stairs. It was dark and I broke my knee. Now my knee is under this weird brace and I'm walking with crutches. And I hate this situation. I can't go to work. I can't go out. Life sucks. So stating the facts, stating the objective facts. What would I say in this case? It was dark. I didn't turn on the light. I wanted to go downstairs to get a glass of water. I fell down the stairs. I hit my head. Thankfully, nothing happened. But I also hit my knee and it got broken. So now it's braced and I'm walking with crutches. Can't go to work. Can't go outside. These are the facts. Without pitying on myself or making myself the victim. Just the facts. Second part, which is very important, place the blame where it really belongs. Taking ownership of the blame doesn't mean that you should beat yourself up. Please do not beat yourself up. You are your own best friend, and that's going to be the case for the rest of your life, if we are to be realistic. And placing the blame where it really belongs, in this case, would be, I didn't turn on the lights, and that's why it was dark, and I hit my head on my knee, but there's not much I could have done because it was dark, and I forgot. I'm not the most stupid person. I'm not the most undeserving person. I just forgot to turn on the light, and that's what it is. Take ownership. Don't beat yourself up. 3, reframe. Yes, this is a little bit Pollyanna optimistic as well, but it's actually realistic at the same time. Reframing in this example would be, I hit my head, but nothing happened. Oh my God. I could have had a head injury. I could have done something terrible to my brain, and it didn't happen. Thank God I just broke my knee, and I can still walk, and it's one knee, and I have crutches, and I'm able to walk with crutches, and I'm not hospitalized. So this is what reframing is. And 4, the most important factor is to give yourself time. You really need to. Because the world is moving too fast and people's demands will never stop. Never stop. That's human nature. When you give your hand, they'll ask for your arm. Never stops. So that's why you have to cut yourself some slack and give yourself some time. Again, in this injury example, you can't just be like, I have to be at the office in a week. I have to, otherwise that person will get promoted. No, you hit your knee, you hit your head. You had a crazy injury story. Of course you have to think about yourself. Life is not running away. Things will be as they are if you go back 2 weeks later. So cut some slack. Finally, there's this one question that psychologists really love to ask. I'm not a big fan, but I still put it on here. How would the situation get better if a close loved one were to change his or her attitude? In what way? This relates to the fact that I said you are your own best friend, because only you know what you're thinking. No one can read minds. Only you know how flexible and durable you are. Only you know how much longer you can continue. So if you don't cut yourself slack, resilience won't come into play. It's impossible. And question time. You can either talk or write if you have any questions. Eda, you look like you have a question.
Like, if you met me in person, you'd know that I'm really like a really, really impatient person. And I'm really going to try to implement these things that you say. I usually cope with, if I'm like really depressed, I usually write in a journal. I know it's like really old school, but it's a habit that I've developed when I was a kid. So yeah. And even now, it only happens like if I'm like really, really stressed about something. So I would write in, it's not even a journal. I would just find a piece of paper. I'd write whatever I feel, however angry I am, swearing, and I'll just rip out the piece of paper at the end and chuck it into the bin.
Perfect!
But that makes me feel really good. So I don't know if anyone finds it weird, but I do this all the time.
I love it.
Yeah, so yeah, that's I guess my way of coping with things. But I really enjoyed the session. I think it was quite useful. I wasn't a person who would usually attend things like this, but I actually really enjoyed this, and I would like to, you know, if you're okay with it, to organize sessions after this as well, on different topics. You know,
yeah.
This was a really interesting topic. I mean, I'd even like to continue with this one, but other topics would also be interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think Regan's got a question.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Why can't I see this?
Okay, he's saying the trend when we have issues is to blame others and not to look in the mirror, but I appreciate how the seminar focuses on our own responsibility in great problem solving. So I really appreciated listening.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I totally agree with that. Exactly. But the take-home message, actually, Reagan, is that we do have it within us. All of us are resilient. We just have to reframe what's going on in our lives. And maybe the best example for this would be sort of think about a keychain that has like 10 keys attached to it. You're constantly trying to open the door with the first 2 keys back to back, and it's just not happening. So it's time to move on to the 8 different keys that you have on your keychain instead of constantly trying with the first 2, if it makes sense.
Yeah. But thank you so much, Lara. I really enjoyed this, and I think the others did too. I'm going to end the session soon because it's 10 past. I actually have to attend another meeting. So thank you for everything.
By the way, if you don't know my email, please write it down so that you can write to me or talk to me anytime you'd like. And thank you.
And if you guys like the slides, if you can send me the slides to Lara, I'll be able to share it with
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Thank you.
Take care.
My pleasure. Take care. Goodbye.
See ya. Bye-bye.